Hello and welcome to the Srijan Wednesday webinars. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is a community initiative by Srijan Technologies where you can tune into a variety of sessions across the fields of technology, entrepreneurship, and community building. In today's session, we are joined by Jyoti Singh, Drupal developer at Srijan Technologies. She is going to take us on a quick tour of the challenges in Drupal 7 and how they are resolved in Drupal 8. The session is focused on understanding Drupal 8 dependency injections, core services, and the best practices for creating custom and contrib modules in Drupal. Before we begin, I would request all participants to please type in any questions that you have during the presentation, and we will take them up in the last 15 minutes of this session. Also, please don't forget to take the conversation live on Twitter using our hashtag SrijanWW. You can share your thoughts by tagging us in your tweets using our handle @Srijan. So, are we all set? Let's get right to it. Jyoti, over to you.
Hello everyone, myself Jyoti Singh, as already introduced by Nilanjana. I am a Drupal developer currently in Srijan Technologies, and my today's topic for the webinar is Demystifying Dependency Injection and Services in Drupal 8. So moving on forward, I would like to tell you about the topics that we are going to cover today in this session. So the objective of the session would be covering some of the problems in Drupal 7, what dependency injection actually is, some of the services and services containers, then Drupal 8 core services that are most widely used by all of us and how to use them. And using services, how can we add on to our contributed modules. So moving on before to the session, dependency injection is actually mostly taken by all the developers as a really complex topic in Drupal 8. Some of the people who are really new to object-oriented programming really find it complex. But this session is an introductory session to all those people who are new to OOPS concepts, because dependency injection and services are one of the core object-oriented concept that Drupal 8 actually implements. So please free yourself to ask any of the question that pertains to object-oriented or regarding dependency injections. So why dependency injection? So before going on to this why dependency injection, I would like to showcase you some of the problems that we are having in Drupal 7. So how we expect our code to look like is actually this, because we want our code to be structured, well usable, the usability with respect to developers or with respect to any other person. But actually what we end up our code looking like is this, a mess, as you can see, because in Drupal 7 there are some of the points that I would like to highlight contribute to a messing up of the code. So the very first thing I would like to quote is the reusability. The biggest issue that contributed towards moving on from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 is reusability of the code. Since we actually don't focus much on object orientation of the code in Drupal 7, so this led to the biggest thing, the reusability of the code. So in Drupal 7, there are some of the things like whenever you want to override some of the functionalities, then you need to create a callback that entirely replaces with your code. There is no way out wherein you can reuse any of those functionalities and just have a simple altering and then return it back. So whenever in Drupal 7, the issue comes with the reusability of the code. Then secondly, it's like how can we test something? Because we don't have any mock objects or any classes or any interfaces wherein we can have the object-oriented approach to have a breakpoints and debug it and to have a unit testing of something. Like whenever we are using Selenium or any other automation tool. What we use as variables, objects, and classes make it really easy to make it something testable. So that is also a issue in Drupal 7. And another is also to make us, even to make a simple test class, we need to call the whole Bootstrap Drupal first. So that's one of the issue that's raised by most of the Drupal 7 developers. Um, the next thing is there is lot of clustering that is happening in Drupal 7 code. Whenever we are trying to achieve some of the custom functionalities, we are too much dependent on .module file. Whenever you see your .module file, it's always full of hook alters, because we need to have all the functionalities that's been altering in .module file. So that leads to an unstructured and haphazard code in a single file. That's not even does give a haphazard look, but also affect your functionality and your performance to some extent. The next is sometimes we even have calculation in preprocessor. That shouldn't be the case, because preprocessor is only intact to the renderability, not calculations. And the last point is we also write PHP in template files. So that was a big issue in Drupal 7 that was solved by Drupal 8 by introduction of tweaks. So there's a separation between the PHP and the templating engine that's been used in Drupal 8. So moving on, I'm going to show you the difference, what happens when we have a wrong approach, rather not a wrong approach, but a procedural approach of writing the code. And then next, having an object-oriented approach to write a code. So let's first take an example wherein I'm using a procedural code to have some functionality. So as you can see, there's a function that calls the global user, and it's it's creating a database query. So what it does, it calls another module, and it's using module load include. So what module load include does, it calls the include file of the module via bootstrapping the Drupal. So what we are again doing is redeclaring everything again. So this is the drawback in Drupal 7, wherein we actually override everything rather than reusing the things. So what Drupal 8 introduced was a more structured and object-oriented approach of doing the same things. So if you see this code currently, it uses classes, it uses function, it uses constructors. It's a more structured way of writing your code rather than creating a clumsy code. So here we are using a user classes which stores the session. You use the session to store languages. So first we have a session storage class, wherein we have a constructor that calls a session name function, and it has its function to set and to get the user session. Next, we have a class user that calls the constructor of the session storage and create an object. Here you can see in the constructor for the user class, it's creating a new session storage object, wherein with the use of that object, you can easily access all the functions that been already mentioned in the session storage classes. So you have better reusability in this context, wherein you can reuse the functions that declared in already existing classes through just object creation. So that's an object oriented approach, wherein we have more structured and reusability with respect to code. Moving on, what is dependency injection? So these were all the drawbacks that were in Drupal 7 that led to the surfacing of dependency injection. And not now what we are going to cover is what is dependency injection actually. How does it solve all the issues that we have discussed right now? So according to Drupal.org, dependency injection is an advanced software design pattern. It implements inversion of control, which means that reusable code, you can call the reusable code that's task specific. This definition is something that I cannot understand, but in very layman language, I would say dependency injection is neither a library or a framework or anything, but it's just a preferred method wherein you can access and use services. So I'll be discussing the services later on as moving on into the sessions. So it's simply a way of how you write your code. It can be a way of thinking or way of designing a code, keeping all the things that we discussed earlier. So it's nothing but a way of thinking and writing your code. So moving on, type of dependency injection. So what does this mean to Drupal developer when we talk about dependency injection? The focus should be writing efficient code, reducing the load. We only load things what we want. So I'll cover this in further section as to how we use things whenever we want it. So there are three types of dependency injections. That is constructor injection, setter injection, and property injection. So the most widely used dependency injection we use is constructor injection. That's been most widely used in Drupal 8. So what it does is it makes use of constructor to instantiate all the objects of the current classes or the called classes and then access its function. So, and the setter injection, what it does, it's actually take the argument and then it actually assigns the value to the object. So that's why it's a setter injection. And then the property injection, what it does, it's being used to set some values to some of the properties. Like in this example, we are setting the session storage property as the value of storage. So these are the type of injection that we use, but the suggested type that is to be used are constructor injection and setter injections. Moving on with the example. Actually, I don't have my system right now because I was asked to use Windows. So I would be just going through some of the examples here that I have in my slide. But I actually have a full example wherein there's a working module that uses dependency injection containers and everything. So I'll maybe after the presentation, I'll be sharing with Nilangela so that she can share that with any of you. So to give a quick check as to how we can create services is the file a PHP file that you're seeing in the right hand side. It's created inside the SRC folder. That's a folder inside your root module file in Drupal 8. That's the people who are acknowledged with Drupal 8 will understand this, but for the people who are into Drupal 7, in layman, it's like you have a module and you have a structure wherein you have a SRC, and inside SRC folder you can create all the pluggable things that you want, like your custom REST APIs, your plugins, your blocks, your custom fields, and your services. So at right hand side, I have a PHP file that checks the access for the user for the current route. So this returns that the user currently has the permission for the route or not. So for defining the permission, there's another permissions.yml file in Drupal 8. So after defining the permissions, what we can do is we can create a simple custom access check inside the SRC folder for the event dispatcher. And we can have access there, access function that makes use of account object of access interface to check that it has permission or not. So in my current example, I have actually used a custom permission that I have already created through permission YML file. And what I'm doing in this file is just checking for the permission. So at the left hand side, I am defining a service. So this is the format or the syntax as to how services are defined. So it's a service tag, and we just give it a name. Then we use class as a syntax to access the current class that we are using for the service. And then there are many services that are dependent on other arguments. So just like in this case, we are using current user as an argument. So by passing this argument, we make sure that all the current user objects are being accessible in our current class. And in the tag section, what we can do is to segregate as to which tag category does our services belong. So for currently, I have tagged it as access check, and applies to example access check. So that's my custom tag, and access check is the one provided by Drupal. So this would be not easy to understand because I really don't have my code right now. But if it could have been here, I could have shown you easily how can we create services and access and event dispatcher. So moving on, as I discuss what dependency injection is, it's just a concept, and what it actually uses is services and services container. So what are services and services container? To the people who are really new to Drupal 8, ask me a very frequent question as to how we can access the services and services container, or what is actually services, how can we use it. So in layman language, what services actually is, like if you consider a very basic example, if you have a set-top box TV, like whether it is from Apple, Google, or anything, what it commonly does, it's used to provide you some services. I need not know what IP address it belongs to or API schema that any of its services is using. If I want to watch an HBO channel, I would just ask my service provider to have it subscribed, and then I can access the HBO channel anytime. So what setup box is actually service container that gives you mean of accessing these services. And what you actually access are the services, like the channels you want to access, HBO, Netflix, and others. So Drupal also uses the same idea of services container to load all the services, events, and other thing that user wants with this functionality, and then create instances or the object to access it. So this is what service container does is, and the whole concept of accessing services and container is dependency injection. So moving on, as I said earlier, service is simply an object that is used to access most of the services. And in Drupal 8, that as far I have used services is mostly for sending emails, logging error and messages, creating HTTP requests, and many other tasks. So some of these tasks are mostly covered by the core services provided by Drupal 8 itself. So I hardly have to create any custom services because as most of them are already provided by Drupal 8. So through services, container, and dependency injection, what we actually achieve with the code is it's reusable, it's cluster free, and it's testable. It's reusable because we just have to call a constructor, instantiate the object, and just reuse it any number of times in our code. So it's just a matter of creating an object with a container, or just or we can even directly globally call the services also without having the constructor. So what just the constructor provide you is just another way to create the objects to access your services. Even globally we can access some of the functions like global user that we use in Drupal 7 and module handler. So in Drupal 7, what we used to usually do is have a global variable for global user and module handler. But now in Drupal 8, it's already a part of the service wherein we can have it just use as a service and access it directly without calling it as a global function or a global variable. Because if we follow for the object-oriented approach, it's not good to call your functions globally. So it's better to have it called through objects as a services. Secondly, for the cluster-free code, it's well structured. It's everything is encapsulated into your classes, constructors, your containers. So it's well structured, readable, and more clean code in terms of a developer. And regarding testability, we can create mock classes, mock objects, wherein we can unit test all the things easily. So that helps with lot of testing your code. So as I already said, that it's totally following the object-oriented approach. So everything with your code is totally abstract. So if somebody is new to Drupal 8 and he wants to just have a knowledge with services, he can directly access the services without knowing as to what the services actually does. I can give him a list of 10 services of doing some tasks like accessing the database and other things. And he can easily create objects and access the services without knowing the background actually as to what does my services actually does. I have a list of core services in Drupal 8 that is most frequently used by us. So it's entity query and entity manager. Uh, uh, I I am not a Drupal 7 more of Drupal 7 person, but currently in Drupal 8, what we actually have is a core service for accessing entity query. So there is a method to access get storage function that's a part of entity manager, wherein you just need to pass the name of your entity, whether be it node, whether be it a field, whether be it paragraphs, anything. So that can be easily passed to the entity manager service, and you can load all your entity at one go. So we need not have a global call to entity manager class. So these are the two services that are used to access the information about the Drupal entities. So all the core services that are provided by Drupal is inside the service provider base, and in the core.services.yml file. If you want to go through all the core services that is being provided by Drupal 8 and want to use it, it's inside the code. Most of them are inside the core.services.yml. The next frequently used one is config.factory. The basic concept for Drupal 8 starts with making everything as configuration YML file. So everything you write, you want to have custom, like forms, like plugins, your content type, everything is now configuration. So whenever you want to edit your own configuration, you can just have accessibility to config.factory, and it provides most of the function that loads your config information. Next is the config.storage. That's belong to the same config factory tags, wherein you can have the services that can gives you the information where the variables of your sites are actually being stored. Next is config.type, that tells you about the different data type of the config object that you are currently using. Next is the event dispatcher service. That is one of the widely used services in Drupal 8 that helps you to lazy load classes, so that whenever you are instantiating objects for your classes, it only loads it at that time. So event dispatcher can be used in many of the cases, like checking the access for the user, redirecting the pages. That's one of the biggest use case wherein we use event dispatcher. And then another one is the current user, that I already showed you in the last example how we are using current user as a service. These are most of the lists that we actually use as a core services. Next is creating services in your custom module. So I will like to show you example. I have a GitHub repository wherein I have a example where I can show you the module actually creating event subscriber. So this is my module. It's actually loading really slow. So the SRC folder I was talking about is here. Then I have the info YML file for my module. Then I have a .module file, and this is the services.yml wherein we define our services. So inside the SRC folder, I have an event subscriber. And this is what my event subscriber file looks like. So it actually uses the event subscriber interface and implements the event subscriber interface. So it implements some of the functions that's being used by event subscriber interface, that is on respond and get subscribe event. That is the basic function that we need to override for event subscriber interface. This is a small module that detects the device. So on respond, it gets a response for the device, and it's added to the response is added to the header. And on the get subscribe event, you can write whatever event you want to have with respect to that functionality. So this is a basic example as to how we can create an event subscriber in our module. And Next, I'm going to show how services.yml file looks like in our custom module. So to define a services, here's the services tag. Next, you need to have the name for your service. Next is the class tag, wherein you need to provide the URL or the path to your event subscriber class. Then here's tag that we need to define to our services. That's a event subscriber. So that's a syntax that you need to remember for event subscriber or any other tag that you need to have. And then there's another service that's been defined, that is mobile_detect, and this defines and this is the part to the class. So what we get from here is we can easily call the mobile detect class, mobile detect service, and easily have easily do my functionality. So this is how we encapsulate everything in Drupal 8, rather than having it all in dot module file or everything in my template file. So this is more a structured way of doing things or doing things in object oriented way. So these were some of the steps that I already showed you in my custom module. So it's like create a SASE folder inside custom module, create event subscriber class inside SRC module. Then you need to implement event subscriber interface. Then some of the basic functions or the minimal functions that you need to override are respond and get subscribe event. And then you need to have the services.yml file. So these are the basic things as to how to create a event subscriber that's also a service. So some of the things that I have not covered in this session is also how to alter the services in Drupal 8. So if you want to modify any of the existing services or any of the classes, so you can do it through alter method that is provided by service provider base. So all you need to have a alter method, and then you can alter any of the services that you want. So this is the same example that I showed you. I just wanted to show you the structuring the structure that Drupal 8 actually follows for events, subscriber and services. So next that I already showed you was the tags in services.yml. So the Drupal segregates or groups some of the tags that to make to categorize the services. So tags define the group of the services that you want to specify that this service belong to this functionality. So some of the tags that we basically use are event subscriber, that groups your services into event subscriber categories, and then we have access check that indicates that's basically used to check the user access for the current route. And then there's cache.bin that is used to check for the cacheability and create the cache for your objects. So these are the main tags that we use for the services, and the most used one are the event subscriber, because event in Drupal it's allowed different component to interact with each other. So whenever we want to have any event for our modules, we actually use the event subscriber. I also wanted to show you my module, but unfortunately I don't have it, because wherein I have used almost all the services that's been almost most of the services that's been provided by Drupal 8. So I'm not sure I may be able to share it with you or not. Um, I guess I'm almost done with the session. Nilanjana,
Yes, Jyoti.
can you ask?
Yeah, sure. Jyoti, you were saying?
I was saying you that can you ask the attendees if they want to have any question session?
Definitely. So, thank you, Jyoti, for taking us through that session on dependency injections and services. And I would like to request our attendees, if you have any questions for Jyoti, please type them in and I can take them up. And Jyoti can take them up and answer your questions. While you do that, I already have a couple of questions here with me. So, the first one is I think. If you could just go back to the section where you were talking about tags in services.yml and go through that portion once again, because that is something that one of our audience wants to go a little more in depth into.
Sure. Hello.
Hi, Jyoti.
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
So the question is for how we can define the services.
It's just around the topic of tags in services.yml and just go over that whole topic once again, basically.
Okay, so for defining the services, it's mostly recommended that we tag the services. Even if we don't tag the services, it still works. But for some of the things, like I said, for event dispatcher, like whenever we are creating event dispatcher, for example, a very basic example, we want a redirection of the site before the page load. So whenever we want to have an event dispatcher, we need to have the service to be tagged as event dispatcher. Or if you want some other service, like I already have the example for the current user. Whenever you want to check that the current user is having the access to the current route or not, you need to have the access check tag there. So it's not a mandatory field for services to have the tags, but it's usually recommended to tag them as to categorize them. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I think it would give them a more clearer idea of the tags and services.yml. The next thing we have is you're talking about the importance of the ability to reuse code, or that the ability to reuse code is a good thing for us. But can you go a little bit into why it is important to be able to reuse code? I mean, in terms of time, is it efficient, or is it efficient in time? Terms of like, why is it important to be able to, why is code reusability important?
Mm, Code reusability in context of when we talk about object-oriented programming, it basically revolves around object and classes. So whenever we are going to have some task wherein we have many classes, so it's the object-oriented way wherein we should have created objects to access some of the functions. So taking a very basic example of the one I mentioned here, to check that the user has the permission for the current route or not. So there may be cases wherein you have 100 classes of some functionalities that need to check that the user has permission to such pages or not. So if you create your own function wherein you globally call all the classes, and then again you check for all the permissions, So that's recursive thing that you that's a redundant thing that you are going to do on your files, right? So if you have a already predefined class or a predefined service that's already residing inside the core of Drupal, what you can actually do is just call object in your class, and then you can access it as many times as you want. So it's structured, it gives you reusability, and it's the way how we do it in object oriented programming.
Okay, okay, all right. I think there are a couple more questions around services.yml. So one of them is, can we use a class name as argument in services.yml instead of using the service name prefixed by @?
For the argument, I don't think so we can pass the class name. It's just that you need to pass @ and the argument that's been already predefined, just like settings and something like language manager that's already predefined. So it's not the class name that we need to pass. So you can check all the arguments that we usually pass in core.services.yml. We can get a lot of idea in that.
Okay, okay, all right. Next is, how can you modify a current service? How to modify the current service?
Actually, to modify the current service, there is a alter function that is available in service provider base. So service provider base is a class that's been provided by Drupal, wherein you can write your own class and have a alter function there. So actually I even have the alter function in my module, but what you can do is have your module create a class inside your module. Like for a module, if there is your module called example, so create a example service, create a class with name example service provider. That is the correct syntax, that extends service provider base. Then you can have your function alter there, and then you can alter any service that you want to have, like for user access, like what you want to do after you check the user access, or what you want to do after you get the language manager, like that.
Okay, okay, all right. Next up, I think there's a follow-up question to that. What would be alter name?
Sorry.
So the question is in follow-up to the one you just answered about alter function.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what would be the alter name?
Alter is the function name that Drupal gives you. What you need to just do it, have the module name appended service provider as your class name. So alter is actually the correct function name. We need not have anything like hook, like we used to have whenever we write hook, it should be hook underscore alter. So it's like module name underscore alter. No, we
Hmm.
don't need that. It's just a alter function,
Okay,
wherein you need to have just make sure your class name is your module name appended service provider.
okay. So it need not be hook underscore form underscore alter anymore.
Yeah, underscore alter. No, no. It's basically a separate class inside your module.
Okay, okay, all right. So I think that answers the question better. Um, Another, I think we're getting a lot of questions now. So the next one is there a list of reusable services in Drupal 8 with their alias tags, etc.? So because when uh, when they go into, so they nowadays have to go into each class to discover reusable services, but they're asking if there is a complete list somewhere. Ki these are the reusable services in Drupal.
Yeah, there is already a list of core.services.yml wherein you can get the complete list of all the services that are currently being available by Drupal 8. But yeah, there are different way to access the services, and you need to have a better understanding of the classes that you need to have in your current classes. So it's not basically actually giving you the whole context as to how you can use any of the core services, but it will give you complete list of all the services that is being provided by Drupal. That will help you more of writing your services YML file.
Okay, okay, all right. The next is, can you recommend any other topic on the internet that would complement this topic, some other resource materials or something like that?
Mm, Drupal org itself have a really nice documentation about the services and dependency injection. But if somebody is new to this concept for Drupal 8, they should first go through object-oriented programming, structuring, or Symfony. Basically, I would rather recommend to go through Symfony 2 documentation, because Drupal is actually using this concept from Symfony 2. So Symfony 2 has much detailed documentation about what is services and dependency injection all about.
Okay, okay, all right. The next one is, could you please describe what are @ arguments and how can we create one? Let's say, so they've given an example. If you want to pass an object which is coming from another library, how can we pass our custom object to a service?
For passing the custom objects, I haven't tried discovering that thing. But for now, I'm just using the arguments that's been provided by Drupal. I haven't tried using custom arguments yet.
Okay. But is there anywhere where we can find some answer to this question?
Sure, maybe I can get back to you onto this.
All right. So, okay, maybe this is a question that I would pass on to you via email, and you can look into it and give me an answer, and maybe I can
But yeah,
back to the attendees, and I hope that will be all right with them.
yeah.
Okay, so another question that we have is that in Drupal 8, they're getting an error while using a static dependency injection. Can you maybe tell what could cause it?
It's like if you are there is a logger dot if you have ever used logger.factory. Logger.factory actually what does it provides you to create your own logger files and then access it through services. So sometimes it's like if you directly access logger.factory objects, it gives you error because you haven't used the get function to access your file. So this was the latest error that I got through accessing the services, and this is a really corner case example. But the most error can be the case wherein you have not used type hinting in your constructor, or if you haven't used container classes uh, correctly. So these are the basic errors you may get while using services.
Okay, okay, great. I think we have a little more time left. If there are any more questions, you can please type them in. We will wait for another maybe 5 minutes to see if any of our attendees have any other questions. Meanwhile, Jyoti, that was a really great session, and if it's possible, please share any of the resources that you have around this topic, and maybe we can share all of those with our attendees, and that might help them answer a lot of their questions.
Sure.
All right. I would also like to inform all of you. All right, so we have got another question. Um, could be described the event dispatcher and can you describe the event dispatcher and subscriber?
So what event subscriber is, event in Drupal 8, whenever you want to, event in Drupal 8 allows you to have different component, like wherein you want some of them to interact with each other. So one system may dispatch lot of events. Like many a time what happens is many events are being dispatched by Drupal core and Symfony framework whenever we have some of the requests, and other system component can register the same event as subscriber. So whenever an event is dispatched, a method is called, and each one is registered through this event subscriber, so that they both can interact. This is a very technical way of saying that, of interaction of events with each other. So this is what actually event subscriber means.
Okay, all right. So it looks like that's all the questions that we can take tonight. And I would like to just inform all of you that the complete recording of the entire session, along with Jyoti's slide deck, will be in your inbox by this time tomorrow. So you can refer to it whenever you want to. And once again, thank you, Jyoti, for joining us tonight. And thank you, everyone, for being a very great audience and some great questions.
Thank you.
And yes,
Nilangela, you can post me any questions if the audience would like to ask, if any, going further on, if ever they have any question regarding the topic, they can send you the questions.
yes, exactly. So I think we will be getting a couple more questions. There are already two questions that we would be asking, sending over to you so that you can send us some answers. And thank you for joining us today. And our next webinar is on the 26th of July, and it will be with Brian Olendijk, who would be talking about web components and Polymer.js and how it helps get over some of the challenges in the Drupal's theming layer. And so I wish all of you can join us for our next session as well. And as for in all the unanswered questions, I've been going to forward all of them to Jyoti and have them answer all of them. So that's about it. Once again, thank you all of us for joining today. It was a great session. Thank you.
Thank you so much.